Okay. All righty. So we are going to be talking about some pretty cool stuff today. We're actually going to be getting into some event handling and pulling in some libraries and doing some functions and stuff. All these fancy keywords that engineers tell you to scare you. You guys are about to find out all the secrets. So that's how it's going to work out. The first thing that I kind of need to show everyone is what a function is before we can move forward. So let's say that I had a situation like this. I'm just going to create some JavaScript here. Okay, so I'm writing this is all JavaScript. Inside these two script tags is all valid JavaScript. Cool. Let's say that I wanted to do so this is two pretty simple lines of code. This just asks for a text field to show up, and then I store whatever value the user puts in, and I put it into a variable called prompt. And then this next line on line 11 displays whatever you put into prompt, and it shows it as an alert. Okay, so if I save this and I refresh this, it's going to ask me this is a prompt. Hello, prompt. I put in this value. I hit OK, and then it says prompt was hello prompt. So the value I put in to the prompt got stored into this var prompt variable. Which one is it? I think it's. Uh-oh. There you go. Okay. So whatever I type in here gets stored into this prompt variable. And then when I hit OK, this next line fires that says prompt was prompt. See. Well, what if I want to run this code like 50 times? One solution is for me to just copy this and then just paste it a bunch of times, right? But what if that's kind of ugly for one, just to have this copied and pasted like over and over again. Instead, what you could do is you could bundle this code, because it does a very distinct and specific thing. It asks for a text value, and then it displays that text value. So what I can do is I can bundle it into a single keyword. Just like this prompt and this alert is a special keyword, I can create my own special keyword and bundle code together. Sometimes this is described as creating a subroutine or a method or a function. There's all sorts of words for it. Now, how you do that is you have to first say function. Okay? And just like variables, you have to give function a name. Ask and show is what I'm going to call it. Then you have to do an open parentheses and a close parentheses. And just like if statements, you have to provide a scope. So I'm going to do a open curly brace and a close curly brace. Well, not ask and snow, ask and show. And then I put the code that I want in here. Okay? In the curly braces. What this says is that this function, this bundle of code called ask and show, has a scope, has a chunk of code associated with it. Okay, and that chunk of code exists between this curly brace and this curly brace. So anytime that we tell the browser, hey, let's do ask and show, it's going to run everything inside of this block scope or function scope. Okay, which is everything once again between this open and close. Now watch what happens when I actually run this. I'm going to save this file and hit refresh. Nothing happens. I'm smashing this refresh button. Nothing is happening. Why? Well, the reason is because I did not invoke or call this function. All I did was I just told the browser, hey, this chunk of code exists. I never told the browser, hey, run this chunk of code. Just like variables, you have to define the function before you call it. So I can't call the function before I define it here. All right. All right. Jennifer has a question. She asks, what's the difference between prompt and prompt info? Oh, that was back when. So in this situation, so in this case, prompt is a special keyword that the browser recognizes that says display that actual text field with the text that I write in here. Prompt info is the name of a variable. This is really confusing. I can understand why you found that strange. It's usually a bad idea to name variables after specific keywords in that language. Prompt info is just any label that I made up. I could have named it anything. I could have named it Jennifer's box, for example. And this would have been fine, right? Like that could have been a thing. It's just a label. Usually, good programmers try to make their variables as descriptive as possible. So like this would be better, like user input. User input, right? So I know that this variable is holding what the user just input. And then when I display this alert, I'm redisplaying what the user inputted. Everyone cool? Thanks a lot, Jennifer, for that question. It's great. So let's see. How do I call a function? Well, that's pretty easy. You've given the function a name here. So just like a variable, when you reference it later, you just call that name. You'll notice that Sublime detects that that function exists. And unlike a variable, you have to provide this open and close parentheses, which shows that you're calling a function instead of a variable. Okay. So what this says is it tells the browser, hey, go look for a function that I defined earlier and run whatever is inside of its scope, whatever it's inside of its code. So it says, okay, the author of this code wants the function called ask and show. And I know it's a function because of this. So let's look back in the code and see if there's actually a function called ask and show. Oh, hey, it's right here. Okay, cool. I'm going to run this code inside. Hit save. I'll run this bad boy, and you'll notice that it actually runs. Boom. But what if I wanted to run it like 50 times? I can just copy this line of code and just go, right? Whatever. So this is basically just invoking this set of code, this bundled code, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 times. Even 10 times. So if I ran this or that, 1, prompt was 1, 2, prompt was 2, 3, prompt was 3, right? So on and so forth. It goes all the way to, that should be it, right? So functions are a very convenient way for you to bundle repeated code over and over again. They allow you to kind of reuse stuff over and over and over again. Now, let's talk about what these parentheses mean. So functions can take specific inputs and provide specific outputs. Now, a way that a lot of people in programming talk about functions is verbs. They do things. They do very specific things. So when you name them, you want to describe them as verbs, as actions. Asking and showing is an action, right? As opposed to a user input, which is a thing. So you want variables to be named after solid, like actual things, because they hold things. and you want functions to describe actions that they're going to do, right? Because they're going to perform a set of tasks described inside of them. Variables are going to store a set of things assigned to them. So you can give a function a couple of things that you want it to use as an input to perform an action on top of. You can think of functions also like servants, people. You can hand a servant a hammer, for example, and then tell him to nail a wall together, right? So I'm going to give the servant a hammer, and then the output result is going to be a wall, for example, right? So let's say that I wanted to do something like this. I think this is the effect. Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Let's just make sure this works. Yep. Okay, so what did I do? I changed this function called ask and show to take anything, any value I can put inside these parentheses. And inside of the scope, inside of the function, this value will exist called custom prompt. So whenever it gets called, anything I put in here is going to be assigned to a variable called custom prompt. And custom prompt only exists inside of these two curly braces, the scope of this function. So what am I doing with it? I'm saying, hey, whenever I get something in custom prompt, okay, I want you to call prompt and put that value inside of it and then store it to user input. And now whoever invoked ask and show, hand them back user input. That's really confusing, but I'm going to try and break it down a little bit more. Okay. By showing you what it looks like here. So here I'm actually calling the function. I'm calling ask and show. So the browser's like, okay, this is a function Paul wants. Cool. He must have defined it earlier. Okay, it's right here. And he's passing the servant ask and show, the function ask and show, a string value called what is the value. So he's handing the servant this string. Ask and show is like, okay, cool. I'll take this string that he just gave me, and I'm going to store it in a variable called custom prompt. Okay. Now, inside of this function, I'm taking whatever's inside custom prompt, and I'm putting it into a prompt. This gets displayed to the user. Whatever the user puts in there, I store in user input, and then I give it back to whoever called ask and show. So once again, I call ask and show, I give it what is the value. What is the value? It gets stored as custom prompt. It gets displayed in the prompt. Ask and show now gives me back whatever the user inputted, and I store it into value. So when this return call happens, basically this whole thing changes into whatever user input was. And then it gets stored into value, and then you see alert, it was value. So returns are one of the most confusing things for people to get initially, but they basically act like the servant handing you back something. Okay, I'm initially giving the servant what is the value as an input, and then the servant is returning back to me it's whatever it returns, which is this line. That's really confusing. Is anyone gonna like ask a question about it, or is everyone good? So if I run this, happen. We're trying to expand this. Come on. Well, what happened was that this script ran, and first thing the function got defined, and then the browser got to this line, ask and show, and it passed in what is the value. Ask and show was given what is the value as custom prompt, and then displayed it in this prompt. So now you see what is the value here, just in the prompt. When you do this, what is the value? It's basically like you did this. It's the same thing. Now it shows what is the value. Now, when I put in some random value here, whatever the user input is, it gets stored into user input and then returned back to wherever ask and show was called. So this turns into whatever the user put in here. Okay, so it basically comes out to this. And then it gets stored into a variable called value and then displayed in this alert. That's how it works. Yeah, it's a way to like put a lot of things. To be able to reuse, it's a way to be able to reuse ask and show, to use code and change what inputs it gets, right? Because right now, what this allows me to do now is I could do what is the value, and then I can reuse this and say ask and show, give me a second value. Alert. Second value was. I'm reusing this code. So the first time the prompt appears, it'll say, well, what is the value? And then the second time, it'll say, give me a second value. So when I run this bad boy, first value was first value. Give me a second value. Second value. Value, second value. So functions allow you to reuse code and change what their initial inputs are. Everyone cool? Everyone good? Let me give you guys a second to go ahead and copy this if you want. Cool. All right, I'm actually gonna just comment this out. And let's move on. Now let's do some crazy stuff. Okay. So now that you know what functions look like, this is a big reason why programming is like so big right now. People have been able to take a lot of really useful functions, reusable code. Oh, Lily's asking how I did that commenting thing. It's a hotkey. If you hold down Control and then you hit backslash, which is the key above the right side Enter key, you can comment out any highlighted blocks of code. On Mac, it's going to be Command and the same key. It's right underneath the delete key. So highlight something, hold down Control, backslash, do the magic. Tell your friends about me. That's how it goes. Control and then the key below the backspace. Yeah. Yeah, it should be Control. You have to highlight it first, yeah. Got it? No bueno? It should be it. Oops. I just did it. Control question mark. Oh, control question mark. My bad. It's a question mark. Wrong key. Yeah, it didn't work for me either, Lily. It's the question mark one, not the backslash one. It's the one to the left of the right shift key. Teamwork, guys. We did it together. Now you can tell your friends about me. All right. Command. Do a command and the slash. Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyways, like I was saying, um, there's a lot of code out there that's what happened was is that people were writing lots and lots of code back in the 90s, and they found that the same sets of things were happening over and over again to make websites. So they started bundling code together into things called libraries or frameworks or all sorts of freaking crazy things, and providing them online, open source. Open source means that the code that actually shows what each function does is available in plain text. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to pull in one of these libraries. Okay, it's a free freaking library, and you pull it in using what's called a CDN, which is a content delivery network. Okay, this is not how you do HTML comments, which we talked about last time, but whatever, I'm just writing it out. CDN is a content delivery network. It's a network of computers that sit outside of your home computer that provide useful functionality, sometimes for free, sometimes not. We're going to use a free CDN, and we're going to pull in a library that's incredibly powerful that's called Jquery, and we're going to be using Jquery quite a bit. So it looks like this. Open script. Yeah, but instead of text JavaScript, you're going to type in https://code.jquery.com/jquery3.0.0.js. So what does this crap say? Import whatever the heck is located at this URL. So I'm going to copy this. And you'll notice that there's all of this crap. There's a lot of code here. Okay. What this set of code says is basically copy and paste, copy pasta, all the stuff inside of here, and just dump it where this code is. So you get all of this pre-written code here for free. And it does all sorts of really useful stuff. The web is full of free CDNs and free useful tools like this. There's all sorts of ways to take advantage of it. So we're going to dump this bad boy in. My coworker's asking me things. Okay, so https://code.jquery.com/jquery-3.0.0.js. Cool. Since it's in the head tags, it's going to run before the body does. And like I said during the review, the head stuff's a useful way to hide, information that you're not actually going to display on the website. Cool. So I'm going to show you guys some interesting stuff. We're going to do a new tag. We're going to do an unnamed, unnumbered. I forget what UL stands for. It's called the UL tag, whatever. This is basically a list. It's a list of stuff. Okay. It's just whatever. Like the bulleted list of things. So whatever you put in here is going to show up as a bulleted list of individual things. And to create a bullet, you do li first item, li second item. So a list, first item, but the bullet's going to say first item. Another bullet, it's going to say second item, and then the end of the list. That's what this tag is. No. This is HTML, so it does not need to be inside. It shouldn't be inside the JavaScript. It'll be illegal if it's inside the JavaScript. So if I run this, you'll see two bullets. First item, and then second item. Cool. Yep. UL to show that it's the beginning of a list, and then each LI is a bullet. An open LI tag, and then a closed LI tag. Remember, this is HTML, not JavaScript. This just tells the browser how to draw things. Okay? Now, you can add the ID attribute onto almost any HTML tag. And what this does is it provides a useful way to differentiate similar HTML tags. For example, I can give this UL tag a value of list1. Okay? And if I create a second UL, right, I can call this one list2. So when I save this and run it, there's two lists now. But in HTML, these two things are considered part of list1, and these two things are considered part of list2. They're the same HTML tag. They're both ULs with LIs in them, but they're differentiated by their ID. So this doesn't actually display anything. It's just a useful way to differentiate them. No, ID is just a way to label things, label HTML tags. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Now, I'm actually kind of lazy and I don't want to manually put in each bullet point. I want to actually have it grow on its own. I'm going to delete this. Okay, I'm just going to create list. This is just a regular UL tag, no big deal. And it's just given a label of list. It won't show list. It's just going to be labeled list in the HTML. So when I run it, there's nothing. It doesn't show anything. If I look at the page source, you'll notice that it says UL ID list. There's nothing. Cool. So why are IDs useful? Well, IDs are useful because you can reference them in JavaScript later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button here, and I'm going to give it an ID of button. Okay. Add an entry. Run this, you'll see that there's a button that says add an entry. I did this by creating a button open tag and then a button close tag, and whatever goes in between acts as the label of that button. Cool. I'm going to do it at the top here just so we can keep track of everything. Okay. Oh, I'm going to use Jquery in order to handle what happens when this button gets pushed. So to do that, I'm going to say $. This is going to be fancy stuff. I'll try to explain it afterwards. Actually, I don't need to do this. Li plus task plus $. Oh, I did the slash the wrong way. There you go. Okay. What's going on here? In JavaScript, in jQuery, the $sign here describes that the next thing that shows up between the two parentheses refers to a specific element inside of your HTML. Well, at least in jQuery, the $sign says that the next thing that you see inside these parentheses refers to a specific element in the HTML. So what it says is $document means anything in this document, in this file. All right, you're going to add what's called an event listener. It listens for a specific event. What is the event I'm listening for? I'm saying on a click, on any click, okay? On any click, on any HTML element that has an ID of button, any HTML tag that has ID button, on a click, you are going to run this function. Now, this is called an anonymous function because we're actually passing in a function as an argument to this method. And anonymous functions don't have names in them. There's no name to this function. This function gets invoked or called when a click happens. Okay? So anonymous functions are useful because you don't have to declare them earlier and do like function, click function, and pass it in here. Right? Instead, you can just define them the moment that you need them, which is right here. I mean, you could create the function earlier and pass it in, but whatever. It's just easier if you define it here. So anywhere in the document on a click event for anything that has a ID attribute of button, run the following function. Well, what happens inside this function? Inside this function, we're going to ask for a prompt. What's your entry? We take that prompt and we store it inside of task. Okay. Then I'm going to create a new element, a new HTML element shown by this $sign. That's a bullet point plus whatever came in the prompt, followed by a close li tag. And then jQuery, I tell jQuery, hey, look for any element that has the ID list and add this HTML code that I wrote inside of item. You're going to slap this bad boy inside of any HTML item that has lists. So for example, if I were to put in hello as the prompt value, okay, this turns into the equivalent of hello, okay? And this bad boy gets stored inside of item. So I'm going to copy it just to simulate. So now item holds this set of code, HTML. And this line now says, look for any HTML item that has an ID of list. And you're going to throw item inside of there. So it's like I took this, and then I scanned the document, and I found anything that had ID list. Oh, look, here's something that has ID list. And then I'm going to throw whatever is an item inside of there. So I'm going to do this. That's what ends up happening. Okay. All of this fancy schmancy event handling, function calling, element looking stuff all is given to you for free through jQuery. That's why we imported it initially. All of this stuff comes from the library jQuery. Save this and I run it, add an entry. It's not working. Why isn't it? Hold on. ID button. Yep. Add a thing. Yep. On click button. That's right. Function. Let's inspect what the error was. $sign is not defined. On line 15. It should have been imported here with jQuery. Click button function. Let's see. Body ULID equals list. Yep. Script is JavaScript. Yep. Document dot on click button function. I think I imported this right. Just make sure this is right. There you go. I did the import wrong. There must have been a bad thing in my import here. What did I do wrong? Ah, yeah, SRC. There you go. I did not import jQuery. That was a problem. Anyways, now it works. Add an entry. First entry. What's happening here? Oh my god, this is the worst. Okay. It ran this code. On the click of the button, it ran what's your entry, and I'm putting first entry into this text field. That gets stored inside the variable task. Now when I hit OK, this next line is going to fire. Item, blah, blah, blah. And then it's going to append it to the list. Hit OK, you'll see that it appears. Okay. Second entry. I am a genius. It all goes in there. Because what's happening is the task, whatever I put inside that prompt text field, gets converted into an HTML element by this line. And then it's stored into item. And then jQuery, I tell jQuery, look for anything that has the ID list, and then put this HTML element inside of it. Cool. Of being asked to go over line 15. Okay, so what this says is for the entire document, add an event handler. And this event handler says on any click on any HTML element that has ID button, this means ID button, right? You're going to run this function. Okay. So the question is, do you have to click the button? And the answer is yes. Because the only thing that has ID button happens to be this button. Let me change this. I'll call it the button ID. Might be a little clearer to understand. So this line tells the document anything that has an ID attribute of the button ID, you're going to run this function when a click occurs. That's what that says. And then the function, like I said before, prompt, store it in a task, create a bullet point, and add it to the list. Okay? That's how that bad boy works. So let's do a deletion. I'm going to add another event handler. And it's going to say this. For the entire document, on a click, okay, this time, anything that is of class task, run this function, this dot remove. So what this says is, hey, document, look for anything that has a class attribute of task, and on a click, remove it from the HTML. Okay? Well, nothing has class as an attribute or task as an attribute. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to do class equals task for each bullet point item. So ID and class are two different ways of marking specific HTML elements. Classes, in general, have to do with a collection of HTML elements. So for example, if you have a whole bunch of buttons, you can just give them all a class of prompt button or whatever the heck you want it to be. You can name classes whatever you want. And what this says is for everything that has a class value of task, you're going to run this set of code on a click. IDs are usually specific for individual or very specific HTML elements. I mean, you could also treat them as a class and just say for every, like we did here, for everything that has an ID of button ID, run this set of code. Okay? But they're just two different ways of labeling different HTML elements. Class has to do with a group of things. ID usually has to do with specific things. So these two event handlers are now added to the document. One has to do with things that have a class of task and they remove. One has to do with ID of the button ID and they add things. Save this and watch what happens. I'm going to refresh this page, add an entry, go to work, this, eat food, victory. I don't know. I added 3 things. Watch what happens when I click on one of these things. Gone. Okay? The reason is because each of these elements now has, if you inspect the HTML, you'll notice that now there are 2 elements and both of them have a class of task. That's because in our JavaScript, we told Jquery every time that the prompt is given an OK, right? Take this value, put it as a new line item, and give it a class of task. And on click of any task element that has it as a class, remove it. So if I click any of these, it gets deleted. And if I add one, add this one, it gets added. Everyone cool? Everyone feel like they know magic now? This is freaking happening, guys. I'm going to display this code so you guys take a look at this. Give you guys a second to catch up here. Okay. Running out of time. So I'm going to run this forward a little bit so we can get to the quiz and I can show you guys the bonus thing, which I'm actually really excited about. The bonus one's going to be fun. All right. So I'm going to comment all this out now that I know how to. Oh, actually, no, I still need this. I'm still going to keep it. I'm going to keep it. I lied. Okay. After this script. So I'm going to show you guys how to make things look pretty. How you do that in HTML, there's a variety of ways. But the easiest way and the most common way is called CSS, Cascading Styles Sheets. Okay. They are rules that cascade across your HTML tags and provide style to them. You can have multiple CSS files, which is why they're also called sheets, right? You have multiples of them. Now, to do a CSS, to add CSS to your HTML, there's a new tag called style. Okay. You actually, well, yeah, just like in HTML and in JavaScript for the script tag, there's a additional attribute for what kind. Now, they have a different syntax. It's a different language from both HTML and from JavaScript. There's different rules on what keys you're supposed to press. So if you want to manipulate things that have ID, okay, you have to use a pound sign. Similar to what showed up here, pound refers to anything that has an ID tag. So I'm going to say anything that has an ID of the button ID, you're going to do the following set of styling. You're going to add a border, all sorts of stuff here you can do that Sublime lets you look at. You're going to add a border of 1 pixel, and you're going to color it solid blue. Now, how do I know all these keywords? Well, because I'm freaking magic and I know it ahead of time. But there's plenty of documentation online about CSS keywords, what colors are available, how to make them specific colors, how to add all sorts of stuff. Just Google it. It's not that hard. So hashtag pound ID value, everything that has this ID, add a border of 1 pixel that's solid blue. So if I run this, right, you're going to see that, oh, look, now there's a 1 pixel border around this button that's solid blue. I can make it bigger. Let's make it like 15, right? Oh, look at that. I can make it 150. Oh, that's unreasonable, right? Whatever. Let's keep it at 1. Now it's at 1 pixel. So you'll notice that IDs are actually really, really useful because you can reference them both in CSS and in your JavaScript. Hashtag for the IDs. Pound for the IDs. Got it? What about for class? We gave each of these line items a class value instead of an ID value, right? So how you reference that, just like in the JavaScript where we gave it a dot, a period, right? Same thing. Period, class name, task, okay? Everything that has a class of task, we're going to say, give it a font of sans serif. Font size, if I could spell, of 20 pixels. And let's color it, I don't know, red, right? Refresh the page. Red stuff. Red stuff. And make it bigger. Let's increase this from 20 to 40. Bigger red stuff. Oh, such big. In the CSS, when I say .task, this says anything that has an HTML class attribute tag named task, add this styling to it. In CSS, the hashtag name value here says anything that has an HTML attribute ID of the button ID, add this styling to it. Could have done this as well, right? Save that. Does this? It's not particularly attractive, but it's possible, right? Cool. So, any questions about CSS? Cindy says go back. Go back to what, Cindy? The code? Not sure which back you're talking about. So this is what that CSS looks like. Notice that the way to indicate class and ID is the same both in CSS and in jQuery. Dot for classes, dot for classes, hash for IDs, hash for IDs. I'll provide all this code in the notes folder in Google Drive after the lesson is over so you guys can take a look at all of it. All right. Okay. Everyone's favorite part. Let's see. All right. Which of the following is the way to refer to a class in CSS? The correct answer here is A. The dot is the correct way to refer to any HTML attribute that has a class of that name. In this case, class name. B is for ID. Anything that has an HTML ID attribute of class name will be invoked and given a style with that. C is just silly. If you chose C, please watch the video again. D is also silly. This is actually how you refer to a collection of variables, an array, or a diction. It's complicated. This is another thing in JavaScript. It can mean something else, and this can mean passing in a argument to a function in JavaScript, possibly. Next one, which is acceptable JavaScript? Which one of these is actually correct and acceptable? The correct answer is D. A has the wrong keyword. Func is not a valid keyword in JavaScript. It is in other languages, but not this one. Function do a thing is missing the two parentheses to mark that this is actually a function. C has the block curly braces before the argument parentheses, which is the wrong order. D has everything in the right order. Function keyword, then the function name, then the parentheses, then the curly braces. This semicolon is not necessary, but I'm going to add it anyways. What is a CDN? The correct answer here is D. Consumer denial network might actually be a thing, but it does not actually mean what CDN in the context that we're talking about. Protection script for your JavaScript code. That's nonsense. That's not what CDN means. B is something also I made up, content detection notifier, system that checks code for errors. This is actually called a linter. You can actually use another program that checks your JavaScript and fixes syntax problems or potential issues. Cascading dynamic nux is words that I made up that you might read on TechCrunch somewhere. Just fancy nonsense tech words. Content delivery network, that is actually what a CDN is. It's a distributed set of... Oh, Lily's asking questions here. Paul, is it font family or font style? Because Team Chinatown thinks it's font family. Well, it's going to come up as one of the questions, so you guys will see soon. Oh, gotta go back. Yeah, so content delivery network, a distributed set of servers that provide a service. This is a bunch of machines that exist out in the world that provide services for you to use in your website. And luckily for us, Jquery is available from the Jquery Foundation. You can just pull it in as long as you do it right, not like I did the first time. Moving on. Which of the following is correct CSS? Which one is valid? The correct answer here is D. Dot make. This is not right. The parentheses are not supposed to be there in CSS. Minus is not the correct keyword that we've shown in the lesson so far. This is how to actually refer to an ID. I don't think font will actually work here. And it's font family. Font style, I think, will also work. Font style property is mostly used to specify italic text. So you can say font style normal, font style italic, or font style oblique. But if you want a specific font itself, you have to use font family. For example, Times New Roman, Times Serif, whatever. That's the difference between font family and font style. I don't believe just font will work. Well, in this case, this #make is just the label of some ID, right? So dot make would refer to any HTML element that has class of make. Oh, Cindy said, didn't you say font style earlier instead of font family? Yes, I did, Cindy. Sometimes I make mistakes. I'm sorry. I meant font family. If you look at the thing, how do I look at the thing? Did I say font family? Oh, in your face, I meant font family here. Yeah. Well, yes. Mistakes were made. Moving forward. Will the following code run? The answer is no, it will not, because this line, if input equals yes, is invalid. The question is supposed to be, well, first of all, yes is not a valid keyword in JavaScript. It is in other languages, but it is not in JavaScript. And you have to provide, I think, a 1 or a 0 input. Actually, I think this is one of the problems of duck typing in JavaScript. I think if you ask input equals true, which is supposed to be valid JavaScript, as long as input is a value, any value, this will resolve to true, and it is monkey time will run. Otherwise, if you leave it blank, it will have no, it's not monkey time show up. But just because it says yes here is the reason why it is not going to run correctly. I think that's it. Okay. So here is the rather whimsical bonus challenge for everyone. You guys are going to create your own fake version of Tinder. Okay? And what's going to happen is you're going to create a HTML page that shows an image that has 2 buttons, one for yes and one for no. I have created one called What About Hyunsu? Okay? And there's a I want it button and a no thanks button. And on pressing this button, it takes you to, but what about this Hyunsu? And it doesn't matter what button you push, because there's always more Hyunsu. So that is your bonus challenge for this week. Create a website that circularly provides images and displays the next one on button push. If you want the no thanks and the I want it to do different things, you just can't too. Yeah, you can have it say whatever the heck you want. You could say, what about Cindy? And have a bunch of pictures of Cindy. Or what about, I don't know, what about James? Or what about Sam Hong, you know? It's all these possibilities. But this is the bonus challenge for you. This took me like not that long to make. Are there any questions about today's lesson? He's gonna be so mad at me that I did this. No questions? All right, cool. Well, that ends lesson 2. I will be sending out the video and feedback form following this broadcast, asking you guys for feedback about content, how the pacing was. This one was a little bit more content at a slightly higher speed. is definitely heavier material. I'm also interested in seeing. I've been asking some people about like what other things they want to learn. We could potentially do server stuff. We could do mobile stuff. We could continue to do web stuff. Like all sorts of things could happen. And so far, like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, we're probably going to meet next week Wednesday at 7:30, if that works for everybody. Otherwise, the videos, as always, will be provided online. So, fun challenge might be you guys try to make this right now with people in your room, talk about stuff, provide answers for each other, all that goodness. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. You know how to get in contact with me. I hope everyone has a good evening. See ya.